All right, so today we're going deep on something pretty fascinating. This whole idea of ego and how it can really mess with us when things go sideways.
Hmm. Yeah.
And of course, we always try to find these really interesting stories to kind of illustrate these points, right?
Yeah.
So, get this. We're going to be looking at this through the lens of Katharine Graham's life.
Catherine Graham, totally.
Katharine Graham, the publisher of the Washington Post, steered the paper through like every major event of the 20th century.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I think what's so wild about her story is that her path to success was anything but straightforward.
Right.
It's almost like a masterclass in resilience, right?
Right.
Because she didn't just like rise to the top.
Right.
She had to like claw her way through all these different challenges and setbacks.
Yeah, and to even understand the impact of those challenges, we kind of have to go back to her early life.
Oh.
Which, from what I'm reading here, it was like a level of privilege that most of us can only dream of.
Yeah.
Inherited wealth, prestigious education, a picture-perfect marriage, at least from the outside.
Right. Yeah, and I think that contrast makes her story even more compelling, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because here's this woman who's accustomed to this life of comfort and security, and then suddenly she finds herself leading this massive media empire with no prior experience.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's like being thrown in the deep end without knowing how to swim.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It's a total sink or swim moment.
And it's not just any company. This is the Washington Post.
Right.
Right in the middle of Watergate, the Pentagon Papers. I mean, the stakes couldn't be higher.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The stakes were incredibly high. And I think, that really begs the question of, like, how did her personality and upbringing really shape her approach to leadership and dealing with these setbacks?
Right.
Because the way we handle failure, it's so intertwined with our ego.
It is. And I'm starting to see how, especially for someone with her background, there must have been this immense pressure to prove herself.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm not just some rich heiress. I can actually run this thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And ego can manifest in so many different ways. For some people, it's this need to be right all the time, never admitting fault.
Right.
For others, it's this fear of vulnerability. So they kind of hide behind this facade of perfection. And then, of course, there's, the classic, needing constant external validation to feel worthy.
Right. So, okay, so now we've got Katharine Graham navigating this high-pressure world with, like, all of these potential ego traps.
Yeah.
How did she even begin to deal with all of that? Especially with the personal tragedy that kind of propelled her into this role in the first place.
Well, her husband's suicide was, undeniably a defining moment for her.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just a personal loss. It was very public.
Right.
And it thrust her into the spotlight at the most vulnerable time imaginable. Talk about trial by fire. It really was.
Wow. I mean, it's hard to even imagine having to carry the weight of that experience and then to step into his shoes at the Washington Post during such a crazy time in history.
Yeah.
It's just mind-blowing.
Absolutely.
I'm curious, though, like, how did she manage her ego through all of this? Because it would have been so easy to just let it take over,
Right.
To become defensive or paralyzed by fear.
Yeah, I think what's so fascinating is that, based on everything I've read, Katharine Graham seemed to possess this remarkable level of self-awareness.
Yeah.
Like, she recognized her own inexperience and actively sought out guidance from mentors and trusted advisors.
So instead of letting her ego kind of call the shots, she acknowledged her limitations and surrounded herself with people who could help her navigate those waters.
Exactly. She wasn't afraid to ask for help, to admit she didn't have all the answers.
Right.
And I think that's a key indicator of a healthy ego, right? It's about understanding that we don't have to be perfect. We don't have to have it all figured out. It's about being willing to learn and grow, even when it means being vulnerable.
Yeah, and that must have been especially challenging in the world that she was in at the time.
Right.
I mean, the male-dominated world of media back then.
Exactly.
Did she ever talk about the pressure she felt as a woman leading such a powerful institution?
She did. There's a passage in her memoir where she talks about the constant scrutiny she faced, how every decision was just analyzed and often criticized and sometimes unfairly.
Right.
But what really struck me was her commitment to staying true to her own values.
Yeah.
Even when those values clashed with the expectations of others.
Can you give me an example of that?
Sure.
Like a specific situation where she had to make a tough call that went against the grain?
Well, take the Pentagon Papers decision.
Okay.
Here she was, a relatively new publisher,
Right.
facing immense pressure from the government, her own board,
Wow.
even some members of her family,
Really?
who argued against publishing those classified documents.
Yeah, I mean, the potential legal repercussions were enormous, right?
Huge.
It could have been career suicide,
Oh, absolutely.
maybe even landed her in jail.
Absolutely. And yet she went with her gut,
Wow.
trusting her own judgment
Mm.
and the advice of her editorial team.
Hmm.
She recognized the importance of those documents, the public's right to know,
Right.
and she was willing to risk everything to uphold that principle.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, though, was there ever a moment where her ego did get the better of her? Where she maybe made a decision based on pride or fear rather than what she truly believed was right?
It's interesting you ask that because there's this one incident during the pressmen's strike
Oh, yeah.
where she initially resisted negotiating with the union,
Okay.
and some argue that her stance stems from a sense of pride,
Hmm.
a refusal to back down in the face of a challenge.
So even Katharine Graham, with all of her self-awareness and resilience, wasn't immune to the occasional ego trip.
Well, we're all human rights,
True.
and even the most grounded among us can fall prey to those ego traps.
Right.
What matters is that we can recognize those patterns, learn from our mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
and course correct when necessary.
And did she course correct in that situation with the union?
Eventually, yes.
Okay.
She realized that her initial stance was not serving the best interests of the company
Mm.
or its employees.
Yeah.
It took some time
Right.
and probably some painful self-reflection, but she eventually came to the table and negotiated a settlement.
That's such a powerful example of this whole ego management thing, right?
Yeah.
It's not like you reach a certain level of enlightenment and suddenly you're immune to those pitfalls.
Yeah.
It's a constant process of awareness, self-reflection, and adjustment.
And I think that's one of those valuable lessons we can take away from Katharine Graham's story.
Yeah.
It's not about achieving some unattainable state of egoless perfection. It's about recognizing that we all have egos, that they can both help and hinder us,
Right.
and that the key is to learn how to manage them effectively.
Yeah. It's like we've been saying, failure isn't the opposite of success. It's like a stepping stone.
Right, right. And Katharine Graham's story, I think, really brings that home.
It does.
What's so striking to me is how she didn't just survive these challenges, right?
Right.
She actually used them to fuel her growth, both as a leader but also as a person.
It's like every obstacle she overcame added another layer of, like resilience.
Yeah.
Another tool for dealing with future setbacks.
It's like building up this immunity to these ego-driven reactions.
Right, exactly.
The more we practiced navigating those really tricky situations, the better equipped we become at handling them, with more grace, I think, and more clarity.
And it's not just about reacting in the moment, right?
Yeah.
It's about the bigger picture.
Exactly.
And Katharine Graham seemed to have this amazing ability to zoom out and see the bigger picture.
Yeah, she didn't get bogged down in the day-to-day drama
Right.
or let these petty ego battles kind of distract her from those overarching goals.
Which in her case were pretty massive goals.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, talking about upholding the integrity of journalism, holding the powerful accountable, and ultimately shaping the course of history.
It's huge.
Yeah.
No big deal.
Yeah. But, that unwavering sense of purpose, that was her compass.
Right?
And it allowed her to make those tough decisions even when they weren't popular.
Right.
Or they went against the advice of those around her. She knew what she stood for.
Right.
And that inner conviction really gave her the strength to persevere.
This is what blows me away.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't afraid to stand alone, to go against the grain, even when it meant facing criticism or backlash.
Mm-hmm.
That's a certain level of courage to prioritize your values over external validation, especially when you're in a position of power.
And that's a key takeaway for all of us, isn't it?
Yeah. How much are we willing to kind of sacrifice our own integrity or authenticity just to please others or maintain a certain image?
Yeah.
Because true leadership, true success, it requires us to be grounded in our own values, even when it's uncomfortable.
It's like that quote that we always go back to, what is it? What matters is that we can respond to what life throws at us and how we make it through.
Yeah.
It's not about avoiding failure.
It's about facing it head on.
It's about learning from it.
Yeah, learning from it and using it as fuel for growth.
Right, exactly.
And I think Katharine Graham's story is this powerful reminder that we all have that capacity for growth, for resilience, for overcoming those ego-driven impulses. It's an ongoing process, but the rewards, they're immeasurable.
They are. So, as we wrap up this deep dive into Katharine Graham's life and how she navigated all of these challenges, I want to leave you with this. Think about her journey. What internal metrics can help you define success in your own life? Those guiding principles that keep you on track even when your ego is screaming for attention. Because at the end of the day, the most fulfilling victories are the ones we achieve in alignment with our true selves, our values, our purpose, and that's something worth striving for.